Last presentation of the day is Mariana Rangel to kind of talk to us a little bit about registration and the process that students will go through. And so we'll let Mariana go ahead and get started with her presentation. Are you ready to go?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Patrick, do I need to be over here? Do I need to be around this area?
By the podium, by that area.
Okay. Okay. All right, everyone. So my name is Mariana Rangel, and I'm only going to talk for 30 minutes, so it's not going to be that long. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell you what I do with my class when I talk about advising, just to hopefully give you some ideas of what you can do with your class. So I created this little handout, and just to help you think of the timing of when you should talk about advising, and also when you should remind your students about certain things that happen throughout the semester. And so the first thing I ask you to do is that first day of class, if you can remind your students about the attendance policy, the verification policy, because all of their professors are going to have to verify their attendance, and if they're not there, they're going to be dropped from their class. And sometimes they don't know that. And so let them know the first week of class. And then also let them know that if they need to make any changes to their schedule, they should do so the first week of class, because after the first week of class, if they need to add anything, then they have to ask for instructor's permission. And at that point, there are some instructors who will say, "I'm sorry, you've already missed a whole week of class, and I feel like you shouldn't add this class." So tell them those things on the first week of class. And then our office will begin advising on September 11th, which is pretty early, but we do have a lot of students to go through, and so you can remind them of that on that date. Basically, the way freshman advising works. Now, how many of you are teaching 305? Okay, so you're doing 305. Anyone doing fast track? Okay, so you won't have any fast track students in your class. So for you, your students will be advised by their department always. For everybody else, most of your students will be advised in our office, and I tell you exactly who we advise. Basically, the only schools that we don't advise, so the School of Pharmacy, the School of Education, the School of Journalism, and then a few majors in the College of Liberal Arts, but everybody else will come to our office. And so let them know of that. And then because the drop date is October 2nd, usually the university doesn't place any holds until then, and I find it most helpful to talk about advising after the drop date, because students can go on their My Ole Miss and look at their holds, and that's a big part of it. And then on the 9th, that's when midterm grades are due. And so I think that the 2-week period of the 9th through the 20th of October, if you can cover the advising chapter and GPA calculations, that would be great. And what I usually do is I use 2 class periods for that. And so this year midterm grades are due on Monday. So on that Wednesday, what I'll do is I will print their grades. And now some of you won't have access to print their grades, but just ask them to bring their midterm grades to class. They will have midterm grades. The instructors are required to do that. Yours may not, and so you may just want to combine, because instructors don't have to turn in midterm grades for 300 level classes, but everybody else will. So ask them to bring their grades to class. And then at that point, you can teach them how to calculate their GPA. I find that more effective than just teaching them how to calculate their GPA and just, with hypotheticals, because usually at that point, if they're not doing very well, it becomes real. Like, oh my gosh, I have a 1.6 GPA if the semester ended today, and I would be on academic probation. So maybe it's time to do something about it. So then we learn how to calculate GPA, and I just do it old school. I'll just do it on the board and, multiply it by the number of credit hours and all of that. And we have that in our chapter if you don't remember how to do that. And then I also will go on our website, and I'll show y'all in a second, but our website has tons of resources. We try to gather a list of tutors on campus every year, and we update that list, and then there's supplemental instruction. So I just go and print all of that and just make packets for them. And then I will also print the academic standing policy for the university, just a little one page. I just put Ole Miss academic standing, just so that they can see that they need a 2.0. I think it helps for them to have it in front of them. And what happens if they don't have a 2.0, then they'll go on academic probation and all of that. And then usually what I'll do to end that class period is just talk to them about making some goals for the rest of the semester. So you can do maybe a journal activity, or just talk about making, goals for each class. You can use SMART goals so that they're not just writing, I need to study more for this class. Well, let's be more specific. What does study more really look like, and things like that. And then on the 23rd is when priority registration begins. And so ideally you want all your students to be advised before that. And if you can please just remind your class, before you start every lecture, starting in October, have you guys been advised yet? Has everybody signed up to meet with their advisor? How are you doing on that? And then once registration starts, have y'all registered for classes, and things like that? So those are just some important dates. And then when I talk about advising, usually what I do is I just show them some things on My Ole Miss, and I have mine pulled up because I have a student tab. Some of you are taking classes, so you will have a student tab, but if you don't, just ask one of your students. You're not going to show anything super personal, so just see if anyone in the class is willing to volunteer. And usually what I do is I show them how to find out who their advisor is. If they're in our office, they should know who their advisor is, because we send a lot of emails to them, but sometimes they don't know. So, and that's just under academics, my advisors, and they can see who their advisor is, where they work, their email address, and all of that. So I show them that, and usually what I do, I forgot to tell y'all this, for the advising lesson, I usually will book one of the classrooms in the library. I don't know if everybody has been there, but you'll do the library orientation there. They have 2 classrooms, and instructors can go on the library website and just book a classroom. I just do that because I know they'll have computers, and then, sometimes I get nervous asking students, oh, just bring your laptop to class, and then someone doesn't have a laptop, and they get embarrassed. So we just go over there. They have computers, so everybody logs into their My Ole Miss. I find it more effective when we can look at things together and they can see their holds and their advisor, instead of just me, this is where you look, and then they'll forget. So just do this with them. So have them click and find their advisor. And then I'll just give a quick little overview on how to register for classes. Sometimes students don't know that when they register in the fall, they're actually going to do it on their own. Sometimes they expect to go back to Weir Hall, which is where they go at orientation, and have a bunch of people walking around helping them. So let them know that you're going to do this on your own. So let's, just do a little refresher on how to do it. And then I'll show them, just the fall, they'll be registering for spring. So if they wanted to register for math. And then I show them, if a class is open, then that's good. If it's web, that's an online class. And so usually I'll ask them, is anyone in here taking an online class? And usually someone will raise their hand, and we'll ask them how it's going. Usually we don't. Sometimes we don't recommend online classes for freshmen, just because it takes a lot of self-discipline. Not that they don't have it, but you just have to let them know up front, like, are you going to check Blackboard every week, or do you feel like you need a teacher kind of keeping up with you? And then just let them, decide that. But I just show them all of this, and then I tell them, you have to click on it and then add to your favorites, and then just remind them, because we have a lot of students that will say, oh yeah, I made a schedule, and then we'll go look at it and they don't have a schedule, but then they have favorites. So just remind them your favorites is like your Amazon shopping cart, but you haven't really purchased it until you actually register. So let them know of that. And then I will also show them under registration how to check their holds. So right now I'm not going to have any holds, but your students will have, like if they haven't met with their advisor yet, they'll have an advisor hold. They may have a bursar hold, which means they owe money to the university. And then explain to them, if you owe something, you can't register for the next semester. And then your account builds interest and things like that. One thing that I learned teaching freshmen is that sometimes I think that something is going to be like, oh, they know that. But I have to remind myself, I know that because I work here. And it's obvious to me, free, but they don't know sometimes that they have to pay for everything before they can register, or that, a hold prevents you from registering for classes. So it's, you're never telling them too much. Just let them know of every little thing. So some other holds that you may see, if you have a student with an admissions hold, that means they never submitted their final transcript from high school after they graduated. So and usually they'll be pretty honest, they'll raise their hand and be like, oh, I have an admission hold, what does that mean? And if you can tell them, go ahead, go to the admissions office, talk to them, because sometimes holds take a couple of weeks to clear, especially if it's an admissions hold and you have to get in touch with your high school to send the transcript. And so let them know where they need to go. They may have a conduct hold, and then you talk to them about that. But anyways, that's that. And then, let me see, there's anything else over here.
Check your window.
Yes, thank you. So this will tell them when they can actually register for classes. And sometimes students get a little confused about this, but everybody has a different registration window. And so it depends on, some people have priority registration, but if they don't have priority registration, all freshmen, it will just be kind of randomly assigned to a time. Talk to them about, usually I ask my students, what was it like to register at orientation? And a lot of them will say it was pretty stressful. There were a bunch of classes that were closed. And so, that's an encouragement for them to go ahead and meet with their advisor early. As soon as your window opens, go ahead and register for classes, because if you don't, then a lot of classes will be closed. And so if you can talk to them about that. And then sometimes I will show them, so this, they can check their attendance if they scan into their classes, and then a lot of your students will be taking math, so they can check their lab attendance. I will show them sometimes the access for relatives and guardians. So I'll say, this is my mom. If she called the school and asked me how I was doing, I have yes for academics, yes for financial aid, and yes for paying bills, and so the advisor is going to tell my mom if I'm going to class or not. What I see a lot, because we have to check these before we talk to parents, is no for academics, but yes for financial aid and yes for bills. So yes, please pay my bills, but I don't want you to know if I'm doing well. So, but just show them this and tell them that they can change this at any time. And then usually what I'll do too is, since you're teaching 305, you may want to show them the transfer equivalency report right here, and this is where they'll be able to see all their classes from their previous institution, so you can show them this. And then I'll talk to them about teacher evaluations, and just let them know that they can check those before they register for classes. So usually I'll say, okay, you're thinking about taking business calculus, so let's look at Julie Anderson. And then I'll just show them what that looks like, and I'll talk to them about student comments, and I'll say, usually these are really helpful because sometimes students will give you tips on, a lot of the questions on the test are from the book, and so make sure to always read the chapters, or whatever. So show them this, and then if you can tell them about the 2 incentives for teacher evaluations, that is really helpful. So one of them is if they do their teacher evaluations, they can see their final grades 12 hours earlier. So that's one. But the one that they usually like is if you do your teacher evaluations the next semester, you get a registration window that's a whole day early. And that's really huge because registration is over a 5-day period. And so we have, I don't know, how many undergraduate students, roughly? 20? Let's just say we have 20,000. I think it's a little bit less than that. Let's say 20,000 students. So, any given day, there are about 4,000 students registering for classes. And so if you can go a whole day early, then that's a really big deal. So talk to them about that. And then, let me see if there's anything else here that I show them. I think this is everything. So then what I do after that is I tell them to go in the catalog. And it's just catalog.olemiss.edu. And I just give them some time to become familiar with the requirements for their degree, because a lot of times students have no idea the classes that they need to take, and I think this helps them prep for their advising appointment, which is what we want. We want students to come in with questions and with a general idea of what is required for their major. So what I'll usually do is have them look for their program. So I usually use psychology as an example. That was my major, but so I tell them to click on their major, and if they don't have a major, just pick something they're interested in. And I tell them just take a minute to read the description. And the reason I say that is because I know when I was in school and I wanted to major in psychology, I thought that when you major in psychology, you were going to learn to be a therapist. And it's really not that. It's a lot more of all the stuff that Dr. Sufka was talking about and all those studies. And if you read the description, it kind of says that. And another thing that description says, it is that, so it is needed to enter graduate programs in psychology and professional schools such as law and medicine. So when I read that kind of tells me that this degree kind of requires me to go to graduate school. It's saying that right there. If you look at BA biology, it will say prepares you for medical school or prepares you for graduate work in biology. And so this is a good way to show your students, like, you know, if you are wanting to be here for 4 years and you're not willing to do anything else, then let's talk about that. Let's find a degree that is not going to require you to go to graduate school. So I usually show them that. I talk to them about 120 hours. What is that? You know, if you take 15 hours every semester for 8 semesters, 4 years, you never do summer school, you will still graduate on time. Sometimes students have a lot of anxiety about graduating on time, so if you can show them that it's really realistic, unless they, you know, start failing classes or taking 12 hours, they should be fine to graduate. And then I will tell them to look at the degree requirements, and I'll ask them to spend some time with this. And so they'll look at the general education requirements. There's a really good chapter in the textbook about the value of a liberal arts education. If you don't cover that chapter, you can talk about that at this time. Sometimes students don't understand why they have to take all these random classes. And so it's a good opportunity to talk to them. You know, if you want to do psychology, why do you have to take 6 hours of history? Why is that important? Or why do you think you have to do theater? Why is that part of your education? And just talk to them about that. And then just have them look at the requirements for their major. And usually what I tell my students to do is to just click on the classes. So social psychology, what is that? And just read the descriptions, because a lot of times, just like me when I was a freshman, you think a major is one thing and it's very different. And at that point, they might have a lot of questions like, oh, it's saying that my major needs a minor. What is a minor? And I feel like these are things that all of you can easily answer. But if they ask specific advising questions, don't feel like you have to answer. Don't feel like you have to tell them what class to take or anything like that. But just tell them, you know, that's a really good question for your academic advisor. So maybe you can, you know, take some notes of questions you have for when you go to your advising appointment. And usually this takes up a whole class period. I usually have a lot of questions, sometimes a little bit of panic, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I had to take all this math or all this science for my major. And so it's a good opportunity for students to just really see what's ahead of them, and it gives them an opportunity to ask questions, and if they're maybe unsure about their major, maybe start looking at other options. There are some instructors who will have their students do a 4-year plan, which you can do, and maybe they can take that to their advisor, to the appointment, to kind of help them map out the next couple of years. So you could do that. I think that is, you can show them a list of minors. Sometimes I do that, and I tell them what a minor is if they wanted to do that. Some majors require a minor. And then what I'll usually do is just talk to them generally about what their advisor is going to do for them. Because again, at orientation, advising is very different. They may meet in a group setting. So just let them know you're going to sit down with your advisor. They're going to be talking to you about classes for next semester. Make sure that you make an appointment. Make sure that you're early for your appointment. And at that point, you're going to find out your registration window and all of that. So, and then I just tell them too, your advisor is your go-to person at the university. So anytime you have questions about anything or you have any problems, you can always go to your advisor. And then the textbook, and we're changing the activity a little bit, but there's a little activity of good questions to ask your advisor. So you can do that activity with your students. And then another thing that you will get from Dewey, and this will be towards the end of the semester, you will get a list of your students who don't have a schedule, because when you ask them, have y'all registered for classes, everybody's going to be like this. And then when you get the list, there's going to be like 10 of them who haven't registered for classes. And so please follow up with those students, because our office is responsible and we're kept accountable for freshman retention. And so we need to know who is not coming back. And if you have a student in your section that says, I am not coming back next semester, please ask them why, because we do keep track of those reasons. And you can email me, you can email Dewey, Rachel, any of us in our office, and we document those reasons. Otherwise, we'll start calling them to try to find out why they left. So please do that. That's very helpful to us when EDAG instructors do that. So does that help give you an idea of what to do in your ADHD class? Okay, I didn't want to talk too long, but just let them look at all this stuff. Let them sit with the catalog. Students don't look at this enough. And then, you know, they have a big surprise when they're majoring in biology and they're like, oh, I have to take 2 sciences, which blows my mind that surprises them, because if you're a science major, you have to take science. But, you know, usually it's a good activity for them, and calculating their GPA as well. So if y'all have any questions about advising or anything, I can come talk to your class. Not everybody's class, but some classes, if you let me know right now, and just talk to them about advising or anything that you need. You can contact me, you can contact Rachel, and we can certainly help you out. So, all right, y'all, that's all I have.